Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Friday, August 30th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 124 is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3: The Black Order.
This is how it all ends. I shall be waiting here for you.
We're gonna hit the ground running here. They say that giving good feedback should start with something good, then something bad, and then end with a good or reassuring note. That's getting thrown out the window, and I'm getting all of my issues with this game out of the way up front. I have complicated opinions of Ultimate Alliance 3. When it came out, I was beyond hyped for the game, given how fondly I remember the original Ultimate Alliance, which I ranked as my 176th favorite game. Then I started playing it, and while I did enjoy it, it was nowhere near the level that I expected. The story, while fun, felt very rushed, with no time to breathe from one crazy event to another. One of my favorite things about the first game was the team headquarters you got to explore and just hang out with the characters. It was awesome. Yeah, you don't get any of that here, like none at all. Another thing I loved was playing through key comics for each character to unlock new outfits and really run through some solo stuff with them. That's gone too, at least in that way. They did replace it with something else, but more on that in a bit. By far the biggest disappointment, however, was how they massacred my boy! Doctor Strange is my favorite comic book character, and I now own a lot of useless Doctor Strange stuff, including a 60-year-old graded comic of his origin story found in Strange Tales 115. I was first introduced to the character in the original Ultimate Alliance, and not only is he present in the third title, he's a major part of the story. When fleeing the Black Order, Thanos' elite strike unit, you need to get as far away as possible, where even they can't find you, so you're teleported to the Dark Dimension, the domain of the dread Dormammu. While there, you find there's invasion rifts starting to open for the Dark Dimension to invade Earth. You discover Stephen Strange interacting with these rifts, presumably closing them to protect all of reality, as is his job, but he's actually being controlled by Dormammu, and you have to knock some sense into the Sorcerer Supreme. It's a great boss fight, actually, and got me so excited to unlock him as a playable character, and then I did, and immediately discovered he sucks. I'm not the only one that thinks this. Even with DLC packs expanding the roster and adding more things, Doctor Strange is widely considered by far the worst character in the game. The problem is that in an effort to make him mechanically fit within the Sorcerer Supreme role, they just gave him the largest energy stat, which is nice, he should be able to do that, he's the best spellcaster, all of that, but they made everything else suck to kind of compensate, being like, oh, well, it's fair and equal, right? No. His spells aren't actually good. The base damage and scaling from stats is terrible, and he's really just awful to play as. Of course, that hasn't stopped me from playing him a ton anyways, just to do it. Liam O'Brien returned to do a great job as the voice of Stephen Strange, as he usually does. In fact, when I read Strange comics, his is the voice I hear in my head when reading Stephen's dialogue. As a quick note on the voice acting, the visual and sound design of this game is pretty great. There's loads of talent in the game, and it looks fantastic. Scott Porter voices several characters, including arguably the main character of the game, Star-Lord. If you're unfamiliar with Scott, he's an actor working in voice, film, and television. His most notable roles are Jason Street in Friday Night Lights, Rex Racer in Speed Racer, and he's currently playing Mayor Paul Randolph in Ginny and Georgia, one of my favorite shows on television right now. But the dude is also a massive nerd and comic book fan. He voices a ton of comic book characters in various media, and is the long-running voice of The Flash in different DC animated projects. I personally think he'd make the perfect Cyclops in the MCU, so consider this my campaign to make that happen. He even voices Cyclops in this game! If you're like me and love comic books and games based on comic books, you should play HeroClix. It's a tabletop collectible miniature skirmish game based largely on Marvel and DC comics, but sometimes they do other stuff too, like Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or Kong. Frodo Baggins can fight the USS Enterprise, and I don't necessarily mean the crew. Before I get sucked in and spend too much time on it, it's relevant not only for the intellectual properties, of course, but because Scott runs a charity for a rare genetic disease called Huntington's disease, and does a big fundraising event in Alabama every year in May. He's also been playing HeroClix since it first came out in 2002, and the dude is super awesome to hang out with and play with at this event. I make the 13-hour one-way drive every year for it, and hopefully I'll remember to bring my copy of this game next year so he can sign it. But that's not what this video is about. Some of my other complaints with the game are that you can't customize your abilities like before, though I'll give that a bit of a pass since the roster is significantly larger. So in an effort to make characters feel more different from one another, it's easier for each character to have a smaller toolkit. While there are different costumes in the game, you can't level them up like before, providing passive bonuses for each character as you could in the first game. That was awesome. Now instead we have this dumb thing called ISO 8. ISO 8 is a new system. Via enemy drops or as rewards from different things or found in chests, you can get different crystals that can be equipped to your characters. There's a bunch of different colors that generally are mapped to different stats, but they also can have non-stat related bonuses like bonus experience or making enemies more likely to attack you or doing special damage with certain elements, things like that. This does allow you to customize your characters for sure, but the inventory management for it all is so outrageously annoying that I would rather not have to deal with them at all. It's also such a grind to get enough of the best ones to like really push your characters if you wanted. Not only do you have to grind levels to get them to randomly drop, you then need to grind getting enough dust to level them up a whole bunch and spend credits, the in-game currency, each time you do so. Though that last one is not that bad to do. You're going to be swimming in credits by the time you care about min-maxing characters. That's fine. But it is a grind on top of a grind on top of a grind, and it's very tedious and annoying with the luck-based elements. I very much preferred the costume system from the first game. The story is rushed and loaded with pacing issues. My favorite characters are terrible, and a lot of the customization options I really enjoyed are gone. So why did I rank the game higher than the original and by a pretty decent margin to boot? Well, there's a few reasons, but the biggest is really simple. Game feel. Combat in this game is smooth. Each character has 4 abilities, and as the character levels up from 1 to 100, you earn points you can spend to upgrade those abilities. Using Doctor Strange as a disappointing example, he can use the Flames of the Faltine, which looks like it should be a devastating flamethrower attack, and instead tickles a group of enemies in front of you. Then he has the Crimson Bands of Citrak, which are actually pretty good. They bind and stun a handful of enemies for a while, and in some of the more challenging content of the game, they can go a long way when paired with certain other attacks from other characters that can do a lot of damage to someone stuck in place. Then he has the Bolts of Balthak, which does a spinning laser-like attack. It hits most of the screen, which is good, but it does so little damage that it's not. It does admittedly save a lot of time if you're running through content you're grossly out-leveling for some reason, though, which does sometimes actually happen. Lastly, he has the Winds of Atum, which is by far his most unique ability, being one of the only ways to consistently heal your team in the game. It should be a very defining thing about his character and make him awesome. The problem is that it heals for so little. Even if you spammed it constantly to keep healing, you're giving up too much by forcing a quarter of your team to pretty much never attack. So really, the designs for his attacks are all great, and you actually get to see them in action in the boss fight against him, where he's much more powerful, but the numbers are just too low to be worth it as a playable character. And if you know Doctor Strange, you know those are all great thematic choices for his abilities. There's more to the game than just spamming abilities and attacks, however, though that is often a lot of what you're doing. Many enemies have what's called a stagger meter. Your attacks will damage their health, but also interact with this meter. Once you break the meter, the enemies will take a lot more damage, and if you chain the right attacks together, they'll also be stunned to be in the stagger state for much longer. This is really the strategy for the vast majority of fights, and it's a great gameplay loop. Each attack and ability helps with this, and while some individually do pretty well, the core idea of the Ultimate Alliance games is that teamwork can overcome anything, right? Well, you can combo together most abilities to pull off some pretty crazy stuff. Solo, you just hold the right trigger while pressing your ability buttons, though in actual co-op you can call for combos in-game, and allies can just press the A button to combine with you. Or you can, of course, use your mouth and actually talk to another human being. A novel concept. It's up to you. But the last part of the combat is the really exciting part, with each character having their own extreme attack. There's a big meter that fills on your character portraits, and once full, you can press both shoulder buttons to launch an extreme attack, but if you combo those, they become much better, resulting in what's called an alliance attack, doing really massive damage. It's a spectacle to watch and a lot of fun to do. In fact, when you get to the really difficult stuff, that's really what the combat can revolve around. In addition to earning the points to spend on abilities when you level up, you also gain points to spend on universal bonuses. There's a few more ways to get them, but leveling up is the easiest. There's an enormous grid with different bonuses to unlock, laid out kind of like a spider web, branching into different stat-oriented categories, similar to the ISO 8. But in addition to stats, you can get some big things out of it too, like the ability to heal based on the damage from your alliance attacks, making them not only important offensively, but sometimes critical defensively to recover from massive boss hits. Completing each section of the grid is definitely rewarding, though it is an absolutely massive grind, because the level cap in this game is 300. So what do you do to fill that time while grinding to 300? Well, you do a lot. That's the other thing the game really has going for it, is the insane amount of replayability it has. On the simple side, there's hidden boxes in each level of the story mode that have cosmetics and concept art, sometimes cool items, so you can replay that a bunch to get them all across all of the different difficulties. If that was it though, it'd be really disappointing. There's also something called infinity challenges. There's several different grids of increasing difficulty, each with their own layout and unique levels. Many of these challenges require using specific characters, kind of replacing the comic book solo missions from the first game, though if I had to pick between the two, I'd do the thing with the story elements instead. Some of the more open-ended ones are a lot more fun to me, and they are great for grinding without having to do all of the story stuff over and over and over. Like this Wakanda one that's awesome for leveling up characters, because you can just stand Ms. Marvel in the middle and have her do a spinning kick over and over and kill everything because she reaches most of the screen in the tiny enclosed area. My big issue with them, however, and this is a big issue, is that it's just reusing fights and zones from the story, so you're kind of still doing the story anyways, just with a twist. But this is how you unlock some of the hidden characters on the roster, like you can unlock the Mad Titan himself, Thanos. But wait, there's more! Everything I've talked about so far is just in the base game. There's several DLC expansions for the game, adding new characters and, importantly, new game modes. The Marvel Knights expansion adds, well, Marvel Knights, but also adds a new way to interact with the campaign with Gauntlet mode. Play through a hodgepodge order of campaign missions, but with unique modifiers and requirements, often facing off against additional bosses in the form of playable characters as vampires. It's admittedly not that amazing, because it's mostly just the campaign again, but it's at least different, and you can do an endless survival run of them all, getting big rewards for doing well. Importantly, however, you can now earn shield points from the Gauntlet, allowing you to buy new cosmetics and voice lines and all sorts of stuff for all of your favorite characters, or dump them into alliance points to spend on that enormous web of passive bonuses. The second DLC is X-Men Rise of the Phoenix. This is the best one, and for one reason only. Yeah, you get access to more mutants that you didn't get originally, like Phoenix, who has a critical, super broken ability that slowly does damage in a massive area and converts that damage to refilling energy for your whole team. If you have a dedicated Phoenix player keeping that up and a large enough amount of enemies, you can spam all of your strongest attacks literally without ever stopping. It's the level of support that Doctor Strange needed to have but did not. But more importantly, this DLC added more Gauntlet stuff, including the ability to pick up the Phoenix Force, which I think was more fun than the vampires. But the best part about this expansion, and really the best part about this entire game, is the Danger Room. This game could have pretty much just been the Danger Room, and there's still a chance that I would have ranked it higher than the first Ultimate Alliance game. The idea with the Danger Room is that there's finally player versus player. You can do it offline or online, though they've turned off the matchmaking now, but you can still make custom lobbies. 2 teams of 4 race through different gauntlet-like stages, with the first team to complete the objective being the winner of that round, and then you do several rounds. There's more to it than that, however, with different mini objectives popping up randomly on the side of the screen, and if you complete one of those before the other team, it sends an obstacle via the Danger Room to the opposing team, whether that be a debuff to them, new enemies, or buffs to their foes. It creates for some chaotic, hectic fun that also has a lot of room to be highly strategic, and you can really min-max the team, even at the highest levels, to gain serious advantages. I love the Danger Room, and it makes me sad I had almost no friends that played this game when it was new, because I would have loved to get a dedicated 4-person team going. The last DLC is the Fantastic Four: Shadow of Doom, which serves as an epilogue to the story of the game with a full additional chapter exploring the nation of Latveria, as Doom has acquired one of the Infinity Gems you've worked so tirelessly to protect and hide away. It's by far the hardest campaign chapter, and is meant to be a real challenge to veterans of the franchise as a way to really finish on a strong note. I quite like it, though some of the puzzle/trap-laden areas are something I wouldn't want to do more than a couple times, because they can get pretty annoying. The fights are great, and adding the Fantastic Four, and by expansion, Doctor Doom as playable characters, is a great expansion of the roster. While it was a little lacking at launch, being fun but extremely simple and repetitive, the DLC expansions elevate Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 to one of the best cooperative beat-em-up experiences I've ever had, being something you can play with kids, to offering game modes that allow you to really dig deep into the nuance and be extremely strategic and competitive. It's a great game, and I can only hope we'll eventually get Ultimate Alliance 4, just to drop the ISO 8 and give me back solo story missions.
Were so intense that even Doom's instruments couldn't accurately decipher them. I fear that your recent encounter with Thanos and the Infinity Stones may have reawakened ancient cosmic forces, and they might be
Headed here, to Earth. Doom felt them too. They have witnessed our power, and they seek to restore the cosmic balance by removing us from the equation. But fear not. Doom shall lead your pathetic assemblage of heroes to glorious victory against them.
Hard pass, but thanks anyway.
Yeah, I'm with Torch. You know Doom can't ever be trusted.
But his motivations to protect Latveria, in his own twisted way, have always been clear. And if Victor is concerned enough...
Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 124th favorite game, where Link is questing for an all-powerful sword, but not the one you'll ever guess if you don't specifically know the GameCube version of this game.